Oliver James stepped off the train at London Victoria Station, clutching his worn leather briefcase tightly. The morning air felt different here, crisper, somehow more serious than back in Birmingham. He straightened his tie, a gift from his mother on graduation day, and checked the address one more time. Bridgerton Tech, one of London's rising tech companies, would be his home for the next few months. As he walked through the gleaming glass doors of the office building, Oliver felt, his heart beating faster, this wasn't just any job. His father, Robert James, CEO of Horizon Enterprises, had sent him with a secret mission: evaluate whether Bridgerton Tech was worth the $2.1 billion acquisition they were considering. The company was struggling financially, despite its brilliant engineers, and Horizon could be its savior, or its executioner. Oliver alone would make that call. "Welcome to Bridgerton," said the receptionist with a polite smile. "Mr. Foster is waiting for you." William Foster, head of engineering and Oliver's new team leader, was a tall man with cold blue eyes and an expensive suit. He barely looked up from his computer when Oliver entered his office. "You must be the new engineer from Birmingham," William said, finally glancing at Oliver. "HR keeps sending me these regional hires. Let's see what you can do." The first team meeting later that morning set the tone. Oliver sat quietly, taking notes and observing the dynamics. When he finally spoke up about a potential solution to a coding problem, his Birmingham accent rolled through the room like an unexpected wave. "Sorry, what was that?" William interrupted, a small smirk playing on his lips. "Could you repeat that, in proper English? We speak the Queen's English here." Several team members laughed nervously while others looked down at their notepads. Oliver felt his cheeks burn but kept his voice steady. "I said we could use a recursive function to solve the memory leak," he repeated clearly. "Ah, recursive," William said, exaggerating each syllable. "Yes, lovely idea, if it were 2010. Day after day, the pattern continued. William would find ways to draw attention to Oliver's accent, making it the joke of every meeting. "Our Birmingham genius has another thought," he would announce, or translate. "So that for us, would you?" when Oliver shared ideas. But what William didn't see was Oliver's careful documentation of every project, every team interaction, every management decision. In his small rented flat each evening, Oliver would call his father. "The engineering talent here is incredible, Dad," he would say, looking out at the London skyline. "Emma Wilson in particular has brilliant ideas about artificial intelligence, applications, and James Cooper's coding skills are world-class. And the leadership?" his father would ask. Oliver would sigh. "Needs work. William Foster creates a toxic environment. Talented people are afraid to speak up." "Is it worth saving, son?" Robert would ask, the question heavy with meaning. They both knew that if Oliver said no, hundreds of people would lose their jobs when Bridgerton inevitably collapsed without Horizon's investment. One rainy Tuesday, William was particularly cruel. During a presentation about system architecture, he interrupted Oliver 3 times. "Perhaps we should hire a translator," William joked to the room. "Anyone here speak Birmingham?" Later, by the coffee machine, Emma approached Oliver. "I'm sorry." "About William," she said quietly. "We're not all like that here." Oliver smiled. "I know." That night, staring at his reflection in the bathroom mirror, Oliver questioned himself. Was he being too sensitive? Should he confront William directly? But he knew his purpose was bigger than his pride. Hundreds of jobs hung in the balance. This wasn't about him and William. It was about all the Emmas and Jameses who deserved better leadership. He picked up his phone and called his father. "Dad," he said, his voice firm, despite his West Midlands accent, rolling through each word. "I've seen enough. I'm ready to make my recommendation about Bridgerton Tech." The next 3 months at Bridgerton Tech unfolded like a carefully played chess match. Oliver arrived each morning at precisely 8 o'clock, his notebook filled with observations from the previous day. He documented everything: who spoke in meetings, whose ideas were valued, how decisions were made. The picture that emerged was clear: brilliant minds stifled by poor leadership. Emma Wilson from the AI team became Oliver's first real friend at Bridgerton. They often shared lunch in the small park across from the office building. "Your solution?" To the database issue last week was brilliant, Emma said one day, unwrapping her sandwich. I've never seen anyone approach it from that angle before. Oliver smiled. My professor at university always said to look at old problems from new directions. James Cooper from the coding team soon joined their lunch group. The three of them would discuss ideas freely, without judgment or mockery. These moments became Oliver's refuge from William's constant belittlement. Your accent isn't the problem, James told him one afternoon. William feels threatened by anyone smarter than him, and you, my friend, are much smarter. As the weeks passed, Oliver gathered evidence of both Bridgerton's potential and its problems. His father called every Sunday evening for updates. The talent here is extraordinary, Oliver reported. With proper leadership, they could revolutionize the industry. And without it, his father asked, they'll continue to lose their best people. 3 top engineers have quit since I arrived. The most important presentation of the quarter approached, a showcase of innovation for potential clients. Oliver had developed a breakthrough solution that could increase system efficiency by 40%. After weeks of work, his moment had arrived. The boardroom that Thursday morning was filled with Bridgerton executives and potential clients. Oliver stood at the front, slides ready, heart pounding, but voice steady. For 15 minutes he explained his solution clearly, his Birmingham accent rolling through technical terms with confidence. Just as he reached his conclusion, William raised his hand with a smirk. Perhaps you could speak more clearly, he said, exaggerating a lisp that wasn't even part of Oliver's accent. Our clients might need a translator for that Birmingham babble. The room fell uncomfortably silent. The visiting clients shifted, awkwardly in their seats. Oliver felt all eyes on him, waiting for his reaction. He paused, took a deep breath, and looked directly at William. As I was saying, Oliver continued with perfect dignity, this solution could increase efficiency by 40%. The testing data is on page 12 of your handouts. The presentation concluded with several clients asking thoughtful questions, directed to Oliver, not William. It was a small victory, but it felt significant. That evening, Emma found Oliver in the break room staring at his tea. I'm so sorry about William, she said quietly. He doesn't represent who we are at Bridgerton. Oliver nodded. I know. That's why I'm still here. What Emma didn't know, what nobody at Bridgerton knew, was that tomorrow would change everything. Oliver's 3-month evaluation period was complete. That night, he finalized his report to his father, knowing his words would determine whether hundreds of people kept their jobs or lost them when Bridgerton either received Horizon's investment or collapsed under its financial troubles. In his small flat, Oliver spread out his notes across the kitchen table. He thought of Emma's brilliance, James's dedication, and the dozens of talented people working at Bridgerton. He also thought of William and others like him, creating a culture where good ideas died because of who spoke them. His phone rang at midnight. It was his father. The board meeting is tomorrow at 10, Robert James said. Have you made your decision? Oliver looked at 3 months of careful notes. Yes, he said quietly. I know exactly what needs to be done. He didn't sleep that night. Instead, he rehearsed what he would say when the moment came, when everyone at Bridgerton would finally understand who he really was and why he had come. The morning sun broke through the grey London clouds as Oliver walked into Bridgerton Tech. Something felt different today. The receptionist gave him a curious look, and people whispered as he passed. He checked his watch, 8:45 a.m., just like any other day, but the office pulsed with unusual energy. At precisely 9 a.m., an email appeared in everyone's inbox. Emergency meeting, boardroom, 9:30 a.m., all staff required. No explanation given. Oliver knew what was coming. He had made his final call to his father last night, but seeing his recommendation actually unfold made his stomach tighten. 3 months of careful work had led to this moment. The boardroom filled quickly. Emma slid into the seat beside Oliver. Any idea what this is about? She whispered. Oliver simply nodded. You'll see soon. Margaret Thompson, the CEO of Bridgerton Tech, stood at the front of the room. She rarely addressed the entire staff, preferring to work through department heads. Her face looked serious but hopeful. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," she began. "We have visitors today who wish to speak with us about something important." The door opened, and a group of people in expensive suits walked in. At their center was a distinguished older gentleman with grey hair and kind eyes that looked remarkably like Oliver's. William Foster, sitting near the front, straightened his tie and sat up taller. His entire demeanor changed from the bully Oliver knew to a perfect professional. "Good morning," the older gentleman said. "I'm Robert James, CEO of Horizon Enterprises. For those who don't know, we're one of the largest technology investment firms in Europe." A murmur ran through the room. Everyone at Bridgerton knew the company was struggling financially. Rumors of layoffs had circulated for months. "We've been considering acquiring Bridgerton Tech," Robert continued. "Your innovative work has impressed us. But before making a final decision on this $2.1 billion deal, I wanted to meet you all personally." William's eyes widened at the mention of $2.1 billion. "However," Robert added, "the most important factor in our decision isn't the technology, it's the people and the culture. That's why 3 months ago we sent someone to work among you and evaluate whether Bridgerton Tech is the kind of company we want to invest in." Confused looks passed between colleagues. People glanced around, wondering who the spy might be. "Before we make our final decision," Robert said, "I'd like to hear from our inside evaluator, who's been working here for the past 3 months." Oliver took a deep breath and stood up. Every eye in the room turned to him in shock. He walked slowly to the front, aware of William's stare burning into his back. "This is my son, Oliver," Robert said, placing a hand on Oliver's shoulder. "His assessment will determine whether this $2.1 billion deal moves forward." The room fell completely. Silent. Oliver could hear the building's air conditioning humming. Emma's mouth had dropped open in surprise. William's face had turned ghostly white as understanding dawned. The man he had mocked and belittled for months held the fate of the entire company in his hands. "Dad," Oliver said clearly in his Birmingham accent, making no effort to hide it. "I've made my decision." He looked around the room at all the faces watching him, hopeful, fearful, confused. He saw Emma, who had shown him kindness. He saw James, who had respected his ideas. And he saw William, now slumped slightly in his chair, looking as if he might be sick. The power to change everything rested with Oliver now. 3 months of humiliation could be avenged with a single word. He thought carefully about what to say next. Oliver stood at the head of the conference room, his hands resting lightly on the edge of the table. Around him, the team from Bridgerton Tech and their potential new partners sat in tense silence. The air felt heavy with expectation, and all eyes were on him. He cleared his throat, meeting their gazes one by one. "Bridgerton Tech has incredible potential," he began. His tone was calm, measured. "The engineers here are world-class, and most people work together beautifully." A small wave of relief seemed to wash over the room, but it was short-lived. Oliver's expression grew more serious as he continued. "However," he said, letting the word hang in the air, "there's a serious problem with how some team leaders treat their staff." The tension returned instantly. Oliver's eyes moved across the room until they landed on William. The senior manager sat stiffly, his face pale, his gaze fixed on the table in front of him. His hands trembled slightly, but he didn't look up. "Mockery, belittlement, and discrimination have no place in a company that wants to succeed," Oliver said, his voice firm but not unkind. "These behaviors hurt not just individuals, but the entire team. They destroy trust and make it impossible for people to do their best work." Several people shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. William stayed frozen, his shoulders tight. Oliver straightened, his tone softening just a little. "My recommendation is that the acquisition proceeds," he said, "but with one condition. Bridgerton needs a complete overhaul of its leadership training and a zero-tolerance policy for discriminatory behavior. Without that, no deal can succeed in the long term." There was a moment of silence after he finished. Then, a few scattered. Nods began to ripple through the room. The message had landed clear and unflinching. As the meeting ended, people began to gather their things, filing out of the room quietly. Oliver stayed behind, organizing his notes. He wasn't surprised when he heard footsteps approaching him from the hallway. William stood there, his face flushed. For a moment he said nothing, then finally spoke, his voice low and uneven. "You could have destroyed me today." Oliver looked at him, his expression steady. "That was never my goal," he said simply. "Everyone deserves a chance to learn and grow, even you, William." William's mouth opened as if to respond, but no words came. For the first time, he didn't have a defense or an excuse. He just nodded, a slight hesitant gesture, and turned to leave. Oliver watched him go, feeling the weight of the interaction. He didn't know if William would change, but he had done what he could to point him in the right direction. Change was never easy, but it had to start somewhere. 6 months had passed since the acquisition, and Bridgerton Tech was a company transformed. Under Horizon's ownership, it had blossomed. The once struggling workplace was now a thriving hub of innovation and collaboration. Oliver had taken on a new role as head of the innovation department, and Emma, his trusted colleague, had become his deputy. Together, they had brought fresh energy and a shared vision for the future. William was also back at work. After months of intensive leadership training, he had returned. No longer the man he once was. He had taken the time to reflect, learn, and, most importantly, apologize to those he had wronged. Today was his first day back in a leadership role, though this time he reported directly to Oliver. The morning meeting began in the bright open space of the Innovation Lab. The team gathered around, their faces eager and engaged. Oliver stood at the front, speaking with calm confidence. "Our differences make us stronger," he said, his voice carrying across the room. "Every accent, every background, every unique perspective brings something valuable to our work. That's how we'll succeed. Not by being the same, but by celebrating what makes each of us unique." The room buzzed with quiet agreement. People nodded, their expressions reflecting the sense of belonging they now felt. Then, to everyone's surprise, William raised his hand. He stood, his demeanor humble but assured. "I've prepared a presentation on our new project," he said, holding a tablet in his hands, "but I'd like Oliver to co-present with me." The room grew quiet. William hesitated for a moment, then continued. "I've learned something important over the last few months. Leadership isn't about having all the answers. It's about listening to others and working together. That's what I want to show today." Oliver smiled, a hint of pride in his eyes. "I'd be happy to join you," he said. The presentation went smoothly. William spoke with newfound clarity, and Oliver added insights that enriched the discussion. The team responded enthusiastically, their excitement for the project evident. It wasn't just the content that impressed them, it was the collaboration. Seeing William and Oliver work together showed how far things had come. Later that evening, as the office quieted down, Oliver's phone rang. It was his father, Robert. "I heard about the changes at Bridgerton," Robert said. "It sounds like you were right to believe in them." Oliver leaned back in his chair, looking out at the city lights through the window. "Not all of them at first," he admitted, "but people can surprise you when you give them the opportunity to be better." The acquisition hadn't just saved a struggling company, it had changed lives. It had given people like William a second chance and created a workplace where respect and collaboration flourished. Oliver hung up the phone, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. Transformation was possible, he thought, when people were willing to believe in one another,